Humanity, I love you all with all my heart, with all my might. I'm so Ray. My videos are about love, infinity, creation, energy, because we're infinite love, infinite energy, infinite creation. This is who we are, this is our nature. I'm the author of, uh, of a book called Fantasies and Illusions Compass, the quest for infinite free will. Okay, so I wrote this book. It took me over 5 years. So I wanted to make this video as a synthesis of the book, a full synthesis, as much as I can. Talk about it from my mind. I don't like scripts. I don't follow notes or anything. But I wrote the book, so I should be able to talk about it and flow with it for as long as I can. And touch on the basic points and the most important points and the synthesis of the book, because this is an important this is my life's work, my whole work, my whole life. I've been essentially designing this book in a way or one way or another. My whole book has been about my whole life has been about this book. My whole life has been about this book. And per se, when I made the decision, the conscious decision to write a book, that was over 5 years ago already. I consciously came to terms with the notion, with the idea that I needed to write a book. I needed to write a book, and because my life had been very my life has been an incredible life. My life is an incredible life. I had an incredible life. My life is amazing. I'm very grateful for the life that I have, and everything that has happened to me in my life, because those experiences, those events, those memories that and the people in the world that have interacted with me one way or another allow me to become the person that I am today, the man that I am today, the human that I am today. And I'm very grateful to everyone who's ever interacted with me, because as a result of them and my own life experiences and my interpretations and understanding with my consciousness and self-awareness and my free will, I've been able to become the man that I am today. And I'm happy to say that I'm very happy and I'm very grateful for the life that I have, and everything that has turned out to be what we humans call one's life. My life, I'm very grateful for everything. And this book is essentially, a summary of my life in a big way. It's a summary of my life. And I'm 34 years old. This is my age. And, for normal standards, average standards, I'm very young. I'm a young adult, really. I'm just entering my prime in my life and just getting started. So, and I have been able to achieve a lot. My life, as I said, has been an incredible life, and it would always be, because this is who I am, this is my mindset. And I believe so to be the case. Therefore, my life is what I think of and what I do, with the actions that I take every day. And writing this book has been this incredible exercise of learning about who I am and my nature and my what I'm made of, what I'm made of. What makes me as a person, the my primary elements that essentially come together as one and make me who I am. And the beauty of this is that I am a human. So that means that I have something that I share in common with all other humans. And this is what my book is about. My book is about objective reality and what that means, truth, and what it means in the 21st century. And my life has been that. My whole life has been essentially a journey to understand myself. And in order, as a result of me understanding who I am, I've been able to understand human nature and who we are, our instincts, and our as a species, and who we are, who we really are, and what we made of as a species. And we happen to be this remarkable species. Actually, the human race is just this incredible species. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about this book and the ideas behind the book and what led me to write this book in the first place. So one of the first, I have been my whole life, I have essentially invested most of my time and energy in learning my whole life. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a lifelong reader. I've been reading my whole life, ever since I can recall. In fact, I always make reference to one of my early memories as a child, and it was my paternal grandmother. This woman is the most important person in my life. She played an incredible role in my life. Thanks to her, I am the man I am today, because of her teachings, because of the things that she's done for me, and her love for me, and what she showed me with all her love, and all the things that she did during the time she was here with us. So she was the person that introduced me to knowledge. She was the person that introduced me to reading, to books, to learning. She was the person that essentially believed in me from day one. She was the person that was there for me at the crucial stages of my life. As I was developing as a youngling, I was just very young. And she was the person that essentially guided me and told me about the value of knowing and learning and reading, and the power of books, and how important books are for humanity. Because we are today what we are today because of the things that we know. And the things that we know are so because of the books that we have written. And the books that we have written are so because of the people who wrote those books. And those humans wrote those books because they wanted to share a message with the world, with society, with the collective, with our species, because they had enough in them to amount to a book. Information that will be passed down to generations to come. And as a result, society will be better off because these people have incredible lives that allow them to believe in themselves so they can put down their lives on paper, in paper, and bind those thoughts and memories into what we know as a book, which is essentially the memories of someone's life, written in the method that that person chooses as the most appropriate. You see, because it's the knowledge contained within that person that accounts to the book in the end. And those are the experiences and the memories, the beliefs, right, of that person, the life of that person, because that person became the result of the events and experiences in his or her life, or their life, right? These humans' lives, right? And they accounted enough for them to have meaning, so they needed to be shared with the world, with everyone in society, right? And this is what makes us richer as a result, when humans understand that through knowledge is how we share. This is how we learn. We learn from each other. We learn from each other. And it was my grandma who told me that when you read a book, you're not only learning, but you are one with the person that wrote the book. You become an intimate part of that person's life, because you are essentially learning about that person's life, because that person's life is that book, because everything that that person is has to do with that book, because it's just the way it is, because your thoughts and your consciousness is what you are, and the actions that you take define you. So these humans that write books, including myself, are essentially what's in the book. Those books speak for themselves. You are, when you read someone's book, you are not only reading the knowledge and the words in the book, you're actually becoming one with that person. That person, you become that person. You live that person's life. You walk in their shoes, because that's what the message of the book is that person's life. Whatever the message is, it's that person's life, because someone wrote that. Someone had those ideas and put them down in paper, and then had the bravery to share it with the world. Okay. So I learned this from my grandmother. She taught me these lessons. She told me that when I read, I'm not only reading, I'm becoming the person that I'm reading. Right? So I had these ideas since a very young kid, that when I read something, I was becoming the person that wrote that book, because I was living the lives. As they were writing those pages, I was them. I became them. I became their thoughts, and I became their memories, their events, and their experiences. So we have that in common. So you see, these ideas that my grandma told me, and she said that to me when I was very young. I was very young when all these took place. I was very young, you see, and these words really, they defined me, because I ended up becoming just that. I ended up becoming a writer. I ended up becoming a lifelong learner. I ended up becoming the product of everyone that I've ever read, everyone that I've ever learned from. I have become this human. So you see, I am that. I am the product of everything that I've ever read. And I have read enough at my young age to be able to write a book about objective reality, a book about truth, a book about human nature and our instincts and who we are. So this book that I've written, Fantasies and Illusions, Compass, The Quest for Infinite Free Will, is essentially a user manual. This is what this book is. This book is a user manual. It's a user manual for us, for our species, for each individual. Lived through my eyes, through my experience, that allow me to understand and to learn the things that I know, to become the man that I have become, a happy man, a very happy man, a very proud man, a man who understands a lot for such young age, because I devoted myself to learning, to this endeavor of learning. And not only learning anything, but learning about objective reality, and learning about nature, and learning about the things that matter to us all, because they all apply to all. If you're a human, the words contained in my book apply to you, because these are the words of a human who spent his whole life learning about our nature, learning about objective reality, and learning about the things that are actually true, because they are part of who we are, our senses, reality as we know it. And when I was very young, I always knew that we as a species, we didn't really have a clear understanding of our nature, who we were. And the reason why I was having these thoughts was because I could see it in the world. I could see that our world was the result of not knowing who we were, not knowing our nature, because I could see it everywhere. I could see behaviors that were not in alignment with nature, with our nature as a species. I saw humans living lives that weren't happy lives. Those weren't meaningful lives. They were very unhappy with their lives. They were just living. They weren't really enjoying life. They didn't have, you wouldn't see them smiling. You wouldn't see them happy. You wouldn't see them loving each other or loving themselves for that matter. So you see, and I saw that everywhere. Everywhere I went, everywhere I was, I noticed that humans didn't really know themselves, because if they did, they wouldn't behave in the way they did, because they were going against their own nature, going against their own instincts. So this to me never made sense, and it still doesn't make any sense today. However, I do know now why that was the case. The reason why humans were behaving in such manners was because they didn't know who they were. They didn't know what being a human is, and our nature and our instincts, and the things that are most important for us. They were essentially the byproduct of the environment where they were raised. And the environments were essentially shaped by societies that didn't know our nature. So obviously the results were clear. You see, if you don't know who you are as a species, if you don't know your origin story, if you don't know your genesis, if you don't know your nature, everything that you would do will be just guesswork, because you don't know who you are. Because in order for you to know where you headed, you need to know who you are. And not only at an individual level, but at a collective level, at a societal level, at a planetary level. Everyone, to see the world that we want to see, we all need to be that, because we all are part of the world. And we all take action in the world because our actions define us, you see. Since I was very young, I was surrounded by these notions of these ideas of humans that would share with me in their intimacy and their frustrations that they were so unhappy in their lives, and that they were so unhappy with the way the world was because of all the things: poverty, famine, war, injustice, all these ideas that we know very well. And the more humans I met, the more I would hear the same. I would hear the same, that they were very unhappy and frustrated with the planet, and the way the planet was, and the way things were. And they didn't like it, and they were very unhappy. They felt frustrated because they didn't understand why we were the way we were, and why we were going through the things that we were going as a species worldwide. You see, that was a recurrent theme in my life, and it became very obvious and apparent to me that the reason why we had all these problems, famine, poverty, war, injustice, all these horrible things, was because we didn't know who we were. We didn't understand the nature of our species. And by not having a clear understanding of who we are as a species, these led us to behave in ways that would go against our nature and against our own interests. best interest. Why? Because we were unconscious of our behavior, because we didn't know that we didn't know who we were or who we are. So we would do things that would go against our own benefit, against our own nature, against our own development, growth, and evolution. So I was very young, under the age of 10, when I came to the conclusion that what we needed to know was essentially who we were as a species. We needed to understand at a very fundamental level who we were, our nature, but not from the beliefs of specific groups, but from objective reality. Things that are observable in nature and are true not only of one individual or one group, but of all humans, all individuals, all groups, the species as a collective, all the species. So these are essentially the elements that constitute who we are. When all humans share the same thing in common, that becomes part of who we are as a species, as part of our instincts, as part of our nature. So when you start to put all these things together, and these are the things that are essentially true and applicable to all humans, then you start to realize that that's the best way to build a system, and not only a system, but a planet that essentially operates for our own best benefit, because it's a system that is based on our instincts. It's a system that is based on our nature, on who we are, because it's what we all have in common as a species. So I knew this at a very young age, all thanks to my grandmother. Okay, so I knew this. So my whole life's purpose became to understand human nature, to understand what we were and who we are, and why we would be the way we are. You see, that fundamental question, why? Why? Because why is the most important question. Why? Because it's the origin, it's the genesis, it's the cause, it's the root cause, it's the because, it's the reason, is the first, is the beginning. Why is everything. And in fact, because of me asking why, so why became my obsession. So I started to ask why. So every time I didn't understand something, I would ask why. So as you can see, when you're very young and you have these type of ideas where everything is why-centric, you're why-minded. You become why-minded. And when you become why-minded, then you start to see the root cause of everything, because your mind essentially evolves. Your neuroplasticity becomes that you become why-minded, why-centric. So obviously in the early days of my life, just by being why-minded, without me really knowing what why was at the time, it was just an instinct. I had an instinct because I wanted to help the world. I wanted to make the world a better place. I wanted the world to become the place that we all wanted to be, that we all humans will be proud of. This is what I wanted the world to be. I wanted the world to be what we all wanted it to be. This beautiful place, this wonderful place, with no poverty, with no war, with no famine, with as little injustice as possible, because I was surrounded by it everywhere. I was surrounded by war. I was surrounded by poverty. I was surrounded by famine. I was surrounded by injustice. So I was breathing it every day of my life. I was surrounded by all these negativity, fear, pain, suffering, trauma. My whole life was essentially that. I was surrounded by it. All right. So because of that, I knew that that was wrong, because I could see it. because I was lucky enough to have humans like my grandmother that would show me the other way, the other side of human nature, our good side, our conscious side, our instincts. So because of these, me as a young kid became obsessed with learning. And the reason why I became obsessed with learning is because I was getting an incredible positive feedback loop, an infinite number of virtuous cycles that come as a result of asking why. You see, because I was surrounded by so much negativity. I was surrounded by so much destruction, so much hatred, so much ignorance, so much violence, that I immediately knew that the opposite must be the case. So if this is what violence is, so what is the opposite of violence? If this is what poverty is, what is the opposite of poverty? So you see the polarity that led me to this understanding, this fundamental understanding of duality principles, which is essentially a fundamental axiom of reality, of infinity, because we are infinity. And I ended up that learning that we are infinity because I was asking infinite questions, because I was asking why. And why is infinity? Because if you ask why enough times, you're gonna get to infinity. You see? So I didn't know this, but at the time I wasn't conscious of it, but my mind led me to polarity. It led me to duality principles. It led me to the opposite of what I was seeing. So I would ask why. So for example, I was surrounded by violence, and people were extremely violent to me growing up. Everyone. So everyone. So I asked why. Why are these humans so violent to me? Why are they so hurtful? Why are they treating me like this? Why? You see? So when you ask why enough times, then eventually that leads to the other side, right? The opposite, the other side of the spectrum. And then you start to understand that these people were the way they were because they didn't have access to the opposite. They were essentially raised by situations, environments, and conditions and people who just knew that. That was their consciousness and their self-awareness. That's what they knew. They only knew that. And that's why they were behaving the way they were behaving, because they didn't know anything else but violence. They didn't know anything else but injustice. They didn't know anything else but fear and all these lower emotions, because that was who they were because of the context and the conditions. And they never had the luxury of having a grandmother like the one I did that gave me the very foundational notions that allowed me to escape those realities by asking why. So essentially my whole life, everything became why. So everything that I didn't understand, which was pretty much everything because I was a child, I would ask why. You see, and this becomes an extremely powerful mechanism because you get an immediate feedback, because when you ask why, then you seek answers. And if the answers are not provided to you by those individuals, you need to find those answers elsewhere by meeting new people or in books. Particularly when you're a kid, you then have to do pretty much that. You use the resources that you have to start to learn as much as you can to understand why. So by learning, then you get liberated. Truth frees you, right? Because you understand why now. So that's what I did my whole life. And I started to notice that I was going places because everyone started to turn more violent around me. They were frustrated. They were extremely annoyed by my nature, by my way of being, just by being. And I just was curious. I just wanted to understand things. I wasn't really doing it to frustrate them or to bother them. I was doing it to understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling, and why the world and everyone was behaving the way they behaving. You see, it was an experiment as a child. I was just experimenting, I was just learning. But what I didn't realize is that by essentially asking why, I was, tackling at a very young age the hardest and the most difficult problems that humanity faces. Because these are the problems that made people be the way they are in the first place. So the world is a reflection of the people who inhabits the planet, because we all essentially take action at our level of consciousness of awareness, and what we see is the result of who we are because of the conditions. So I didn't know that at the time, but in hindsight, I was pretty much a philosopher since the day I could think for myself, because I was asking the hardest questions. And if you really understand what why means, that you're not only asking hard questions, but you're asking infinite questions, because why is infinity, you see. And I'm a mathematician, so I learned what infinity is by the way of numbers. And infinity is zero. Zero is infinity, number zero. It's the way it is. And I have provided the mathematical proofs of all these. And by understanding the nature of infinity, which is the sphere, and knowing what that was, I did that at a much later stage in my life, obviously, when I was able to really put everything together. But it led me to that notion by asking why, you see. So my whole life became a journey of self-discovery, because I understood that no one could give me the answers that I was seeking. So I needed to find the answers for everyone else, because no one knew the questions that I was asking, because I was asking the hardest, most pressing questions by asking why. So you see, when I started to meet, I realized that I was surrounded by ignorance, that no one around me knew anything. They were all ignorant. They were all ignorant because they didn't know the reasons for things. They were just doing things, and they wouldn't think about the things they would do. They would just do them. So I was surrounded by ignorance. So I became a light, surrounded by ignorance. And because I knew my context, and I knew where I was and who I was surrounded by, because I understood them, because I was asking why, I was able at a very young age to understand and develop mechanisms that would get me out of that context, so I can be surrounded by people who knew more. So I could learn from people, and then they would guide me to the right books and the right knowledge. So eventually I was able to gather enough knowledge and resources to get the heck out of the place I was. Okay? And I did that because I always asked why. So by asking why, I built a foundation that allowed me to get to where I am today. So I can be talking to you today and have written the book that I've written, which is for humanity. Because I understood that my life's journey was knowing as much as I could so I can help as much people as I can. My whole life became that. And this is the reason why I became the person that I am today. Because I knew that if I kept going the way I was going to get to a unique place, because no one was asking the questions that I was asking. In fact, I was able to move out of the context where I was. And I moved to, at the time, I thought was the best place to be. Meaning, because I asked enough whys, I learned enough to know that out of the context of the planet where we live, this place was, in theory, the best place to be because of the conditions, meaning the opportunities and the context in that space, and the knowledge and the history and the legacy and the heritage of those people inhabiting those lands. So I ended up realizing that by going there, I was going to surround myself with not only opportunities, but with people who would be the smartest people. Why? Because if you compare them with the rest of the world by using objective reality, they were better off than everyone else, right? They were richer, they were more prosperous, they have more opportunities, right? So obviously I sought that, right? I wanted to be surrounded by that. So I ended up going to that place, all right? And I studied there. I formed myself academically there. And I learned a new language. I learned English as a language because that was the language of the place where I was. And I always wanted to learn that language because, you see, it's the language of opportunity. So then again, and because I was asking why, I realized that English speakers were the ones who were ahead in terms of the systems that they were creating and the technologies and the innovations. And if you looked at history, they tended to come from Anglo-Saxon countries, from countries where English was the mother tongue, because just the way the language is extremely practical language that is essentially, it's a technology that we humans have created to become extremely productive and practical and universal. So it's a language that is an incredible language. I'm so grateful for being able to speak English because it's an incredible language. It truly is. In fact, without English, I wouldn't be here today. So then, I moved to this place because, remember, I was seeking answers because I had a lot of whys. So I ended up moving to this place, and when I was there, obviously I was already, after high school. I went to uni there, so I started asking why, and I started to realize that obviously I was learning a lot because I was learning a new language and knew everything. So my whys were answered, right? And I felt great because I knew, you see, I got immediate feedback, the right signaling, because I started to realize that, you see, you were right all along. You were in the wrong place. You were in the wrong place, surrounded by the wrong people. So I was so happy because I was finally learning. So my learning just exponential learning. So I was learning at a very fast rate, extremely fast, because I was only asking why. So I would only do why work. I wouldn't do anything else. So very soon I started to notice that I leveled up with society where I was. So I was on the same level as most people who were raised in that context, and I was new there. I wasn't really like from there, right? I was new there, but I already leveled up. And then I started to realize that my whys were harder to answer now. My hows were harder to answer now because I started to realize that I encounter the same that I encounter where I was raised in that context based on the limitations of that culture. So I immediately realized that it was a worldwide problem. And even the most civilized and the most advanced and developed societies were very ignorant. Because when you start to ask why, and then you don't get answers for the smartest people in the world, then you know that there are big problems because they don't know the answer. And I'm like half your age or younger, and you don't even have a clue of the questions that I'm asking. So I started to realize that I was playing a crucial role in world affairs because I was asking questions that not even the smartest people in the country where I was were even thinking about. So just think about it. The smartest people in the world are not even thinking. They don't even know the questions that I'm asking. Not that they don't know the answer. They don't even understand that those questions can be asked. Right? So and I'm only 21, 22. I'm 34 now. I was quite young, very young. I didn't even have facial hair. Okay? So I was surrounded obviously by the smartest people in the world. And they didn't even know what I was talking about. So immediately I realized that I got to a level where I was gonna do something big. I was gonna do something big because I knew that I was asking questions that are fundamental, okay, for everyone, for the planet, for the species. I knew that. I knew that because I wasn't just talking stuff. I was actually backing myself up with objective reality. I was talking out of encyclopedias. I was talking out of like knowledge, right? Real knowledge, wisdom, ancestral wisdom, like thousands of year old stuff that we've been doing for a long time, right? Like things that are actually the things, the signals, right? The signals. So I realized that I had to believe in myself more. And then that's when I started to have the notions of starting to write my own books and doing my own thing. But at the time, I was still learning a lot because there were so many things. For example, when you're part of society, even though you have like, I developed sort of like, just like, I had two lives. My first life was like doing the normal things that people would do in society, like going to uni, having a job, and all these things, right? Getting a degree and stuff, right? Wanting like to further myself because that's the world where we live in. And then I was having a second life, which is like my thoughts and my consciousness and the things that I really wanted to do, like to answer all the questions that I wasn't getting the feedback. But I was so young that I needed to use all my time and energy for the most part to do the jobs, to go to uni, to study and do all the things so you can be, a member of society and things. So you see, so I didn't really have the full time and energy to focus on the ideas that I wanted to work on because I had all these duties and all these responsibilities because I decided to be someone in life. And when you want to be someone in life, you have all these things that are there that you have to do. So you see, so I had two lives essentially. My real dreams and my passions and my purpose, which is wanting to know why and learn things that no one else knew. And all the things that I had to do, which required a lot of my time and energy because I needed to do all the things that you know how it is. It's life, right? So essentially, it took me to much later in life. You see, it took me almost a decade after that when I was able to free up myself from all these so-called duties and responsibilities and activities, right? That we ourselves believe are the things that we do as adults because we don't ask why. You see, because, you know, that's just the way it is. Hey, that's how they say. That's just the way it is. That's the way we do things around here. And that's just the way it is. So because of that mindset, people, they just continue their lives with that, and they fill their lives with those activities because that they just think that that's what life is. Right? Because they don't ask why. But because I was asking why, then when I got to around, I was 29. I was 29, or 28, 29. You see, it took me a decade to get out of all these responsibilities, all these different things that I thought was what life was about. You see, all the things that I thought were life, that where you're supposed to be, right? Where you're supposed to become. All these suppositions, right? All these assumptions based on what culture says or whatever, right? So, but when I was 28, I knew that to me that made no sense. Because remember, I was having this life of my own that I wasn't getting answers by anyone. All the whys in my head. All the whys in my head that no one was answering. No one. And I was surrounded by the smartest people in the world. Right? So I said I had enough of these because it has nothing to do with them. Because they're good humans. They just living their lives. They're living their lives. And those are the lives that they want to live. And they're happy with that. So I'm going to let them do their own thing. So I'm going to do my thing, you see. And that's when I started to loosen up a lot of the fears that I had in my life about like me chasing my dreams, chasing my purpose, you see, all these notions, because I was so fearful of like, oh, what would be like if, what if, all these fantasies, all these illusions, right? So remember, the title of the book is Fantasies and Illusions Compass, the Quest for Infinite Free Will, right? That's the title of the book, and it's a very purposeful title, right? It's packed with pretty much the essence of what the book is. So this is a synthesis, right, of what made me write this book. So I was around 28, 29, I think it was late 28, when I realized that that's it. I'm just gonna spend as much time and resources because I was working so hard in building up like a life, traditional life, that I built up a lot of resources and infrastructure and systems and foundations that allowed me to liberate myself from all these wrappings. So I essentially decided just to follow my heart. And then I just dropped everything else that wasn't my book. Right. Everything that, because by that time I already gathered enough information to know what the brightest minds in the world were thinking and were doing, and where I was in relation to what they were doing and they were thinking, and the whys that I have that they couldn't answer. And I would spend long times just seeking signals, right? Because part of my education was that I became an academic. So I would learn how I understood databases, I understood knowledge, I understood all these foundations. So I knew who's who. And if I didn't know, I would know how to find who's who. Right? And I did find them, and I wasn't impressed because the questions that I was asking, they weren't even thinking about it. So it became my life's purpose to find the answers, essentially. My life's purpose became that and then I thought of my grandma, and then I realized, well, grandma, I'm gonna do you right. I'm gonna write a book. I'm gonna find out the answers. I'm gonna find out the answers that no one knows, and I'm gonna put them in text and share them with the world so they can understand my life and what I've become and who I am. At the time, my grandma was still with us. So, you see, that's what I did, and it led me to this day. It led me to this day. And I can tell you that what I've learned in the last 5 years didn't only change my life, but it changed the world forever. Because I became the person that changed the world forever. Because of the questions that I was asking and the things that I was doing. And at the time, I didn't understand that I became a person of interest because I was raising a lot of eyebrows by the nature of my questions. You see, because what I was doing, I was defying all the institutions of planet Earth with my questioning. Because I was asking why. And remember, I'm at the epicenter of everything, right? My society is the epicenter of everything. It's the most developed society in the world. They themselves created the most developed systems that the world follows as guidelines, right? So the world follows the guidelines of these thinkers, and I was defying everything that they were saying and thinking because I was asking why. So at the time, I didn't realize that what I was doing is I became a person of interest, essentially, of the powers that be. The powers that be. Because then again, I was asking questions that were hard questions, okay? And I was doing these in the natural. I'm an academic. I'm a mathematician. You see, I'm a good human. I'm a non-violent human. You see, but then my questions were questions that no one really wanted them to be answered. And that's what I ended up learning. So what I ended up learning in the end is that the answers were known, but they didn't want to be shared because of what it meant for the world, for society at large, because of the nature of the questions. You see? Because of the natures of the question. Because these were questions that were essentially infinity questions, right? Because I was essentially questioning the questioner, right? So that led me to my life, to what my life has become, right? And this all started because I developed this idea called why how. And why how is essentially is the mechanism that unlocks infinity. And I didn't know that at the time, but I created the key that unlocks the DNA structure of who we are as a species. And I didn't know at the time. I didn't know. This is all in hindsight. In hindsight. So I developed why how, which is why and how. Why is infinity and how is how you go about infinity. So when you understand, and because at the time I already I cracked the code of infinity, meaning I already knew the nature of infinity. I knew that infinity equals zero, and I understood the nature of of zero and the charge and the polarity of zero, and I understood that there is infinite energy, and I understood all these notions already. So you see, that's why I became a person of interest, because I was asking questions that would change the world forever, which is what has happened. I changed the world forever, for better. The world is a better place now as a result, obviously. But, it's just the way it is. So it's my life story. This book is my life story, essentially. So essentially, I created this mechanism called why how. And why how essentially is the language of infinity. Meaning, if you use why how as a principle in your life, right? If you use why how as a principle in your life, you unlock infinity. And when you unlock infinity in your mind, that means it liberates your mind, because your consciousness and self-awareness becomes infinity. Because now you're not contained. So your mind, your language, the way you think, your thoughts are not contained anymore. So they're infinite in nature. So when you start to think in terms of why how, which is what I've done my whole life's work. Well, I've done a lot, right? I have done a lot. But why how was like the thing that made me become a person of interest, right? Because it liberates the human mind, essentially. So why how is the liberation of the human mind. That's what why how is. Why how is that? Because it's the language of infinity. So when you use why how, right? When you use why how, then you liberate the human mind, because you are thinking like infinity does, because you become infinity, meaning your consciousness and self-awareness is infinity itself. And then later on I realized that this is just like connected to everything, like our biology and our DNA and everything, our mind, our history, our planet, everything that's worth anything is infinite in nature. And the way you understand these is by becoming one with infinity. And the way you do that is by understanding what infinity is in the way of language, right? Because you gotta understand what language is, right? Language is the way our brain processes information, right? Symbology and all that, meaning and stuff, right? That's what language is, right? So what essentially I've done with why how is I liberated the human mind. Because when you start to engage with why how and think in terms of why how, then you essentially unblock everything. You unblock everything in the mind. And by unblocking everything in the mind, that means the body. So that means that you unlock your DNA. And that's what I've done. And I haven't done it for me, I've done it for humanity, because what I ended up learning is that our DNA is the most ancient DNA in the universe. What I ended up learning is that our species is the most ancient species in the universe. What I ended up learning is that we are the epicenter of the universe. That our sun is not like a random star. Our sun is the central sun of the universe. And we are the most ancient species in the universe. We came before anyone else. And the reason why I was able to learn this is because I unlocked our DNA memories. So I started to have full memory recalls of our species. Right. Why? Because I was able to unlock our minds because of why, how. Because I was asking why, because I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't understand why the world was the way it was. I was just an obsessed kid. Hey, I was just obsessed. I was obsessed. So I was obsessed. I was obsessed with knowing why. And so you become your actions, right? You become your actions. This is what you become in the end. So your actions define you. So my actions are what I think and I do every day. And what I do every day is to ask why. That's all I do. I only ask why because why is infinity. And now that I know that I unlocked the DNA, meaning our DNA was dormant for so long. Because what happened is that we're such an ancient species. We're the most ancient species. So because we're the most ancient species, that means that we're the most evolved species and our DNA is the most ancient. And what I ended up learning, which is who we are, is that by knowing who we are, then we changed everything. You see, we changed everything. Because we are not a random species in a random star system in a random galaxy. Right? We are not that. We're not. We are the most ancient species at the epicenter of the universe. Our sun is the central sun of the universe. Our sun is the singularity of the universe. Is where all the points of the universe meet. And we happen to be the planet at the epicenter. So our biology is the biology of infinity. In fact, we are infinity ourselves. So, but at the time I didn't know. What I was learning is that there is a language. So once you understand the language, then you understand who you are because your mind gets liberated. And this is what why how is. So why how is that? Why how is the language of infinity. Because it liberates the human mind. And by liberating the human mind, meaning it unlocks our DNA structure that has been dormant for so long. Because we're so ancient as a species. We are so ancient as a species. Think about it. So the universe, right? Think about it, right? So by the way, full circle here, the universe is not the only universe. There is an infinite number of universes because it's part of the definition of what infinity is. Infinity is endless, eternal, forever, boundless, limitless. All right? So this is what this is, right? So this is what infinity is. So that means that because of the definition of it, that means that there is an infinite. So if there is a universe, which is this reality that we know, right, outside the human body, that means that there is an infinite number of universes. But what I learned with mathematics and physics, and I learned because I developed these equations personally myself, okay, and the proof is out there, is that we are the zero. Number zero is the equivalent of the sphere, and infinity is the sphere because it's spherical energy. And infinity equals zero because zero is infinity. And the polarity of zero can be mapped out, and this is the proof that I have provided. Okay, so, but that's not the only thing that I've done. I've done an infinite number of things, I think, by now, by thinking infinitely. So what is the meaning of this? Well, the meaning of this is that, right, when you start to think like this, then you start to understand the nature of the universe. And the universe is just this electromagnetic field, which is spherical in nature. And the epicenter is a singularity, which is our central sun. But then what I've learned is because of the nature of infinity is that our sphere, our universe, is only one universe out of an infinite number of universes. So we happen to be the species at the epicenter of our universe. So we're the most advanced species in our universe because we're the most ancient. Think about it. So the central sun is the energy that all the light comes from, all the elements. So everything is created within our universe. But it's the beginning. So you create that, and then after that creation, which is the central sun, everything else comes as a result. Right? That's just the way it is. So because we're the life form at the epicenter of the universe, us, our planet, that means that everyone came after us because we were the first. Which means it makes us the oldest, the most ancient. Which means that it makes our DNA the most ancient DNA. In fact, one of the things that I have discovered is that our DNA, in fact, is the DNA of infinity itself. So consciousness and self-awareness, our minds and our consciousness is infinity ourselves. We are ourselves infinity. Why? Because remember, the singularity is the singular point where all points meet. Which points? Well, the infinite number of points on the surface of a sphere. What sphere? The electromagnetic field of the universe that generates this singularity at the epicenter so the sphere doesn't collapse. It's stable, and that is a central zone of energy, right? And it's infinite energy because there is an infinite number of points on the tension of the sphere and electromagnetic, right? So it has magnetism, so when it turns, it's a vortex, and the epicenter is the energy that gets released, right? So, and we are the biology at the epicenter. So we stare. So one of the things that I discovered is that we can stare at the sun, for example. You see? So we actually, our eyes are designed to stare at the sun, in fact. So by staring at the sun, right? By staring at the sun, you evolve into infinity because you're consuming the energy of infinity. So you see, our cells are that. Our cells are infinite cells because remember, the energy of the sun creates everything, right? And it created us in the first place. So what is the meaning of this? Well, it's very simple. All the points on the tension on the surface of the sphere of the electromagnetic field are meeting at the epicenter, which is a singularity. Right? And that energy is released. And we consume that energy, right? Because we're the biology, the most developed biology at the epicenter of the universe. And what's our biology? Our DNA. So our DNA memories is the memories of all the energy from the central sun. And the energy of the central sun is the energy of everything that exists. Which means that our DNA contains everything that exists. which means that we are ourselves infinity, but we're just the biological expression of it, which means that our consciousness and self-awareness is the consciousness and self-awareness of infinity itself, everything that exists that created this universe. So, but this is not the only thing that I learned. I learned that by understanding this, we ourselves are the creators of everything. We created everything with our consciousness and self-awareness as a species. Because we have evolved into this. Because we're the most ancient species in the universe, because we're the epicenter, we were able to develop infinite technologies and encoded everything in our DNA. And started to develop these spherical technologies that were essentially the technologies that allowed us to move around and develop the most incredible civilization in the universe. But things happened in the past that led to fantasies and illusions took place in our conscious and in our self-awareness, so we forgot who we are until now, because events took place that led to a fallout of the Ice Age. The Ice Age is a fallout of the events that took place in the past, which is an ancient warfare. Our species engaged in ancient warfare with the most advanced sophisticated technology in the universe, because this is who we are. And that led to our self-destruction, and we forgot who we are as a result of that, because our DNA went dormant. But what I've done with How, I unlocked it. So I reawakened the human DNA, and I became the first human after the Ice Age to awake, to become conscious of who we are. And by doing that, I was able to do it for everybody, so everyone now can access everything again. So you see, I changed everything forever because we didn't know who we were, right? Remember, that was the first reason why I started to ask why when I was little? And this was what led me to writing the Constitution of planet Earth. And this is what led me to doing all the things that I've done, because what I'm doing is essentially, I am infinity, because we all are. But by becoming one with, conscious of my nature like we all are, by becoming conscious of that we are the biology of infinity and that we are the creators ourselves, I was able to essentially become one with infinity in a conscious manner. So I've been able to essentially do all the things that I've done because I became infinity by my consciousness and self-awareness being one with it, because I'm tapping into our DNA, which is the DNA of the universe, of infinity, of everything that there is. So by asking why, you see, it's infinite in nature. I got to become myself infinity. But not only for me, because this is just a self-realization, becoming conscious of it, which means that I am just a human, meaning there is billions of us. So we all this is not only me, it's all of us. I just happen to be the one that wrote the book. Right. Why? Because I was asking why. And that led me to developing How. And that led me to developing everything that I've done and write this incredible book that has changed the world forever, because we're better off now. Our planet is better off than we were. So I am going to be remembered as the human that did it. Just by asking why, by the way. So this is why I do what I do, you see. So by you reading this book and engaging with me, you are one with infinity, because we all are. So you see, remember, the book is, my grandma told me that when you read a book, you become that person. So anyone who's watching these, Anyone who's reading and learning, you are me, which means that we all the same, which we all are what we are, which is infinity. And the other thing that I learned, because now I just know these things because I just tap into our DNA and it's just the facts of the universe. It's like I'm accessing that. I'm getting the answers immediately. All the whys, I'm getting them from our DNA because everything is stored in there. You see? So another thing that I learned, which is extremely fundamental and it applies to all of us, is that love is the highest energy of creation. So when you love, like, you manifest universes with your consciousness and self-awareness, which is what we used to do in the past because we have created an infinite number of universes ourselves. And because we became infinity ourselves, we are infinity, it's our DNA. So you see, our universe is just the universe that we inhabited before we became conscious of who we were, so we could start creating an infinite number of universes ourselves. And that is what led to the fallout, the ice age, that led to that ancient warfare, because we became an incredible species. And there were issues because other species weren't like us and they didn't share our nature, so that led to conflict. And that conflict led to like the world that we live in today, right? Precisely. So, but that's all changed because of what I've done. Because I love, and love is the highest energy of creation. And I was always guided by love from the day I was born to be able to do this for everybody, for humanity, for the planet, for our beautiful planet, right? For our beautiful planet, because we have the most incredible planet. And something that I also learned is that we actually manufacture planet Earth, our species. That we don't even come from planet Earth. We built planet Earth with our technology because we wanted to come closer to the central of the universe, the epicenter, so we could evolve further to become what we have become, which is what we are. You see? Because this is who we are. We're this amazing species. We're just this remarkable species. We're just the human race. We are amazing. We are amazing. We are incredible. You see, and I love everyone. In fact, remember, I come from a tough upbringing. Right? I told you. That led me to this moment, right? So I just this is annals of history. This is recorded for everyone, you see. The people that I love the most are the people who have caused me the most damage and have tried to hurt me the most. Because without them, I wouldn't have been able to do what I've done. So all of you watching this feed, you know who you are. I love you very much, and I'm very grateful for all the lessons, because without you, the world wouldn't be what it is today. So I didn't do this on my own. We did it together. So you should be proud of who you are because of what you've done. All the things that you've done to me. So I can get to this moment and be here today. I love you very much, all of you, and you know exactly who you are. Thank you for everything that you've done for me and for helping humanity to become what it's become, because you were the ones that led to this moment, and I'm just the medium. All right? I'm just the medium. I love you very much, all of you. Very much so. Know that. Know that. Because we are all infinity. So are you. So are you. Whether you know it or not, or you want to deny your nature, that is up to you because you have free will. But we all one. And I love you very much, all of you. I have learned to love you because I have learned to love myself. And by loving myself, I love everything there is because we're infinity. And we are everything there is. Because we are the human race. So, humanity, I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. You see, I just wanted to make this video explaining the book and what the book is. Okay. So it's a book about love. It's a book about the human story of humanity, who we are as a species. And it's a visual book. You have the visuals and you got me talking about the visuals. And there is also some text because I've written the Constitution of the Republic of Planet Earth. So that's a lot of text there. And there is some poems that are a lot of text. There's a lot of text as well, but it's a lot of visuals. And there is a lot of videos of me explaining those visuals and those texts. Because that's just the way I thought was best. And I think that's just the way it is. And obviously, I love everyone. Everyone. I love everyone out there. Everyone. All humans. Love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. Obviously, I'm going to be making more videos because I love making them. But I just wanted to make this one and thank everyone. And I just wanted to share a little bit more about the reasons why I wrote this book. And the reasons why I've done everything that I've done. I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. I'm so Ra Ray. I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind.